Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. It's your host, Danny Haipong. I'm here with Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, Marine Intel officer, geophysicist, and show friend. Scott, good to see you back.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you about the realities of the war. First, I want to just review a bit about what has happened since the last time this show aired. In terms of Operation True Promise 4, as this leads into the address that Donald Trump is going to give to the United States about Iran. Supposedly, at least that's what we're being told. So in Wave 89, it was one of the biggest since the beginning of the war. And we had Al-Kharj in Saudi Arabia, Iranian media, this is all from Iranian sources, saying that they took the Al-Kharj base where 200 U.S. pilots have been relocated. There's also direct hits on a helicopter base in Kuwait and in the UAE. Their bases were targeted and struck there as well. And the promise made by Iran was to begin hitting U.S. targets. Firms has begun. Amazon Web Services, along with a telecommunications company based in Beltelco, Bahrain, was also hit by the cyber attack. Now, let's go to Scott. Israel has also borne much of the brunt of Iranian strikes. And Iran is saying they're now coordinating with Hezbollah and Yemen as part of the entire resistance. Donald Trump is saying that Iran is now begging for a ceasefire. He's kind of flipped on this Strait of War issue, saying it doesn't need to be resolved to end the war. Now it does need to be resolved. Could you describe the realities of the current state of the war as Iran and the U.S. are providing conflicting accounts through both their words and their actions?
Well, first, we have to understand that Iran has stuck to its plan. Iran had a strategy and has been executing and implementing it. The plan has flexibility built into it that Iran is prepared for. So as the conflict continues, Iran has been able to expand the scope and scale of its response, not just striking Israel, but also targeting American bases. Donald Trump expressed surprise that Iran would do this, but Iran had been saying they would do that regardless. But also expanding the conflict to regional actors who have been supporting the U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran, namely the Gulf Arab states. And they've also demonstrated the ability to diversify their targets, as you pointed out, in response to following American attacks against Iranian universities and Iranian civilian infrastructure projects. The government of Iran has put universities in the region on notice, specifically those with a significant American presence, as well as American businesses operating nearby. And as you mentioned, they struck an Amazon-related business in Bahrain, and there will be more to come. It's always interesting to hear the skeptics claim that Iran is running out of missiles or doesn't have enough missile launchers. And yet today, Iran demonstrated that it has enough resources to expand its launch capacity. We're also seeing Iran begin to utilize more advanced missiles. They intended to deplete their older missile stockpile, and now they're deploying new missiles produced underground in assembly facilities. Iran's capabilities aren't diminishing, despite what Pete Hegseth claims. Iran's capabilities are expanding. This is Iran winning the war. There's just no other way to put it. The United States is in a purely reactive mode. Israel is in reactive mode. All the United States and Israel can do right now is drop bombs on targets they can't even properly identify. We're in a situation where, the U.S. military planners have defaulted to the tonnage equals damage model. It's the same model we used during Desert Storm when, near the end of the strategic air campaign, as it came time to launch the ground invasion, people like me who did battle damage assessment were there. We were saying that we hadn't achieved the level of destruction that the commander-in-chief, General Schwarzkopf, said was necessary before starting the ground attack. And this frustrated Schwarzkopf and the Air Force because they simply weren't getting the job done. I mean, they were flying aircraft, they were dropping bombs, but air power alone will not win a conflict. This is a lesson that's been understood ever since air power first came onto the scene. It's a supporting element. You can't win a war through air power alone. And yet this is exactly what the United States is trying to do. And what happened is they In order to get the green light for a ground attack, they just changed the equation. They said, it's not about what professionals like me see on the ground. It's about if we drop X number of bombs, we achieve a certain percentage of outcomes. And so they just started dropping bombs, increasing the tonnage, and they started proclaiming victory. And they launched a ground attack. But, the war wasn't won by air power. I got thrown out of the theater after the war ended because I had the audacity to attempt to do an on-the-ground battle damage assessment of an actual battlefield where the Talcana Division engaged the U.S. Army. And I was going to grid it out and go in and, document and record every single piece of destroyed Iraqi equipment and then determine what destroyed it through examination, what was the kill, and then identify the individual weapon that killed it. And see, exactly what percentage of Iraqi equipment was destroyed by ground forces or by air power. The Air Force would like us to believe that they destroyed everything. It turned out they destroyed almost nothing at all, that almost all of the damage done was done by ground forces. And this is, as soon as I started doing that, I came back from my initial excursion. And it was the military police who took me in and said, you're going home, pack your stuff. We're going to put you on the airplane. They shut it down because they don't want the truth. I'm just telling you right now, we are not winning this war by air power. When you have Hegseth talking about bombing them or Trump saying bomb them back to the Stone Age, we're not accomplishing anything. We're blowing up empty buildings. We're blowing up civilian infrastructure. History will show, for example, in World War II, when we targeted the German defense industry with a strategic air campaign, they went underground. They were producing more Messerschmitts at the end of the war than they were at the beginning. They had improved. They increased the efficiency of their production by going underground. For the Germans, it was oil and being able to have gasoline for their tanks and aircraft, but they were producing more aircraft. The Iranians have been preparing for this war for 20 years. According to some estimates, they have 27 underground missile cities. And these aren't just missile launch sites, but also missile production facilities where they can assemble the missiles. We're just not ready for this. So we don't have a plan. We literally don't have a plan. We're making it up as we go along, and we can see that with Europe. I mean, in 1990 and 1991, we built a coalition. I mean, remember, we had French airplanes flying, Italian airplanes flying, British airplanes flying. We had a British division, a French division. We had Arabs. The Syrians were there. The Egyptians were there. The Moroccans were there. The Pakistanis were there. We had built this coalition to confront Saddam Hussein. We had a Chapter 7 resolution from the United Nations Security Council. And importantly, as Americans, we had a congressional resolution authorizing the use of force to implement this. In 2003, we couldn't get a Security Council resolution. We couldn't get, we got some sort of half-hearted congressional authorization. But we went to the Europeans. And I remember, Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Armitage went to NATO in the spring of 2002, and they made the case. They said there are weapons of mass destruction, and NATO needs to intervene. I was invited by NATO to come and give a rebuttal, and I went, stop it. The U.S. ambassador at the time called me a known enemy of the state and said NATO shouldn't allow a known enemy of the state to address it. I had the meeting, and NATO rejected it. They said, we're not going to war, and probably because of the briefing I gave. I think it was, the majority of NATO ambassadors who attended the briefing wrote demarches to the United States condemning Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Armitage for lying to them, misleading them. And NATO didn't attend, but at least the United States tried. You gave it the old college try. I've still talked about old Europe, new Europe. And we turned to New Europe and got the Poles to send commandos in. And this was just the beginning. One reason we expanded NATO was to get this new Europe we could actually manipulate, but we didn't even try this time. No effort was made whatsoever to get Europe on board. When I flew to Desert Storm or Desert Shield, at the time I flew from the United States, from Tampa to Spain, and then from Toronto to Riyadh. Spain is an important transit point for U.S. aircraft. We have to logistically sustain this war, and we do that through an air bridge from the United States through Spain and then onward. Torrejon, Sigonella in Sicily is also an important base. Italy played an important role. Einstein plays an important role. We have bases in the United Kingdom that play an important role. They've all been denied to us now because, I think the British have opened up their bases, but Spain and Italy, they're not allowing their airspace or their bases to be used because we didn't even try to coordinate. We made no effort to coordinate with Europe. We've lost Europe. And now what? Trump's throwing a temper tantrum and saying, we're going to leave NATO. We'll leave NATO already. I've been supporting leaving NATO for a long time because NATO is an organization that has had no legitimate mission since the end of the Cold War. But, right now, the Europeans always feared America leaving it. But it's been exposed. If Europe stays in NATO or if NATO stays intact, Europe is just solidifying the reality. They're nothing more than an extension, tools of an American foreign policy that is about illegal wars of aggression, because that's what's happening in Iran today. There is no legal foundation for what we're doing, no constitutional authorization, no authorization under the UN Charter. It is an illegal war of aggression. We didn't even try to get them. We're sending a third aircraft carrier. We had 7 aircraft carriers deployed up front during Desert Storm 7. Because we knew it was a war, we were ready for the war. We don't know what we're doing right now. Ground troops, boots on the ground. Do you guys understand that 10,000 troops accomplishes nothing? 0. There will be no ground invasion with 10,000. You might do a raid, but an invasion implies that you're seizing and holding territory. Please, people, do you think we can do everything? And I'm trying to tell you, as a guy who was in the Marine Corps, and I love the Marine Corps, troop and battalion landing teams will do nothing against the Iranians. They might be able to carry out a raid here, a raid there. But when you look at large-scale amphibious operations, battalions aren't that big, just 500, 800 men landing on the beach. How much territory can they hold? Use your brains, people, use your brains. They can't hold any territory. We should be talking about divisions, corps, armies. That's what it would take if you want to go on the ground in Iran. And we're not there, not at all, not even close. And if we wanted to be there, how would we mobilize them? How do we get them, from point A to point B? It takes us 6 months to get a U.S. Army Heavy Brigade ready to deploy to Europe on their rotational basis. 6 months of advance time. Get all the personnel up to speed and everything like that. Get the equipment prepped. Then you have to ship it over to Europe. Then it has to be offloaded and, all that kind of stuff. Where are they going to be received? How are we going to get the equipment there? We've got a couple of brigades worth of equipment in Kuwait. Are you going to land the troops there under fire? There's, John Boyd. John Boyd spoke about, he's a colonel, John Boyd. He was the guy who came up with, the OODA loop. The OODA loop is the decision-making cycle: observe, orient, decide, act. It originally comes from fighter pilots. I think they called him, 30, he basically said. In a head-to-head match, he could come in and initiate, and you would always initiate an action, and then the other person has to respond. And he knew his aircraft, and he would always get into a kill position. Boom, shoot you down by observing, orienting, making the decision, and acting. The person who can execute that cycle. You're inside the enemy's decision-making cycle. Because now what happens is the enemy is reacting to you, and when the enemy is reacting to you, you get to move them where you want them and kill them. The Marine Corps adopted the OODA loop in the 1980s for a maneuver warfare concept. This is when it came into prominence, when I was going through my officer training. Maneuver warfare, all about the OODA loop. That's the key. You get inside the decision-making cycle, you win. The Iranians own that cycle right now. Everything we're doing is reacting to the Iranians. Nothing we're doing is proactive, absolutely nothing. We are just reacting. They are steering this ship, and as a result, they're being very effective in what they're doing. We are absolutely chaotic and ineffective in what they're doing and in what we're doing. And you see that with the president. He's just all over the place. 1 minute we need the horror movies, the next minute we don't. It's, oh man, let me just tell you something. I'm going to turn off the comments because I'm feeling bad, and honestly, I'm in a killing mood right now. And I will reach into your comments section, pull people out, and bite their fucking heads off. So off they go, because I'm just not going to let this happen today. Go ahead, Danny. I'm all yours.
I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, what I wanted to ask you then, Scott, as a follow-up to all this, given everything you've said, what exactly is Iran accomplishing right now compared to the United States and Israel? Because, as you mentioned, Iran is proceeding very methodically, following a planned strategy that reflects decades of preparation. I mean, just against Israel alone, we're talking about 100 missiles in 24 hours. This is what Iran is claiming. Actually, the Institute for the Study of War says Iran isn't firing anything right now. But at the moment, it seems like a really strategic plan is being executed. Despite all this talk about negotiations, despite the ceasefire, maybe there haven't been many strikes in the last 6 hours, last night. And then suddenly all these locations are being hit. So, and I'm going to pull up what Donald Trump said as you're talking, because it's just in his own words. He's saying one thing one day and then something else the next day. He's saying, we can end the war without reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran says it's open. They're just controlling it. And then he says, today, absolutely not. They're begging for a ceasefire. He's flip-flopping almost every other day now. What are the U.S. and Israel achieving against Iran? What's Iran achieving against the U.S.? How's this shifting the military and power balance?
First, know that Iran didn't start this war. So we can't say what Iran's objectives were. This war was forced on Iran. Iran was ready for this war. They prepared for this war. And, they basically said that these forces that initiated this war must be defeated before the war will end. Not just fighting for survival. Iran is fighting for victory. Victory is defined by, the United States leaving the Middle East and by Israel being curtailed from carrying out the kind of aggressions that they have been. And so, Iran also has a secondary, mission of breaking the backs of those Gulf Arab states who have been supporting the United States and Israel against Iran for these many years. Iran is going to ensure that when this conflict ends, they're not looking for a ceasefire. They're looking for the termination of war. That going forward, there will be no resumption of this conflict, that the enemies will have been defeated. Now, Iran can't physically defeat the United States. To be honest, we haven't suffered any meaningful casualties. They've taken out, some aircraft here, some aircraft there. They've killed a couple dozen people, wounded hundreds more. But, that's insignificant losses in the scale of things. War is war, war is hell. And our militaries are designed to be more resilient to this. Going into Desert Storm, we were stocking up on tens of thousands of body bags because that's what we expected. And we were expecting to take those casualties and win to prevail because, that's how big boys fight. We haven't been hurt, but military force is politics by other means. And here the U.S. is losing politically. Just consider what the Iranians have accomplished. For a second, the United States is going to be evicted from the Middle East. When this is done, we're out. Our bases have been destroyed. But even if we wanted to come back, we'd have to rebuild them at costs of tens of billions of dollars that we don't have. But the Gulf Arab states are being punished for hosting us. Part of this deal is to break them, so they say we don't want the United States here because the United States has been exposed as a fraud. The whole purpose of the United States being there is an extension of the 1970s Carter Doctrine, which provides security guarantees to Gulf states for the continued free flow of energy security. The Iranians control the spigot. They control the Strait of Hormuz. They alone decide what energy flows through and what energy does not. The United States can secure nothing. Every single one of these Gulf Arab states has been pummeled by the Iranians, and there's no defense against it. Iran has said that Israel always acts as if it has the ability to reach out and destroy. And of course they did. On the first day, they killed Ali Khamenei, who wanted to die. He was in the easiest place to be found, and they killed him. They made him a martyr and united Iran in a way that nobody could have imagined before the war. But Israel is being slaughtered, pummeled. Well, they are, actually Israel's closer. I love it when you have these Israeli propagandists. I can't even do an Israeli accent anymore, but, it's a ridiculous, stupid accent. How they haven't suffered any real casualties and soldiers aren't hurt from the Iranian attack, but that's not the purpose. Iran's missile attacks don't aim to kill Israeli soldiers, but to destroy infrastructure, and there they are succeeding. A major oil refinery was hit, power plants were hit, and soon Iran will escalate. Iran must be careful. avoid being too existential with Israel since they have nuclear weapons. As Israel attacks Iran and Iran retaliates, this will impact Israeli targeting decisions going forward. Israel is now being pummeled. The U.S. will be evicted and Israeli behavior will change. But look what else they've done. Because of Iran's unyielding stance, because Iran hasn't been defeated, and because of Iran's continued resistance, NATO is now on the verge of dissolving. I mean, just think about that, Danny. NATO is about to go away, and it's going to go away. It's the end of NATO. So the United States is going to be evicted from the Middle East. The United States is going to be leaving Europe. And now we go to Asia, South Korea, Japan. Stripped of their defenses, they see American security is gone. Japan and South Korea are now starting to ration energy, unable to get the oil the United States guaranteed would be flowing. We can't guarantee squat. Not only that, we've stripped all our defenses bare. We have no missile defense shield left in the Pacific, and we can't rebuild because we have nothing left. We've used it all up, literally reaching zero precision strike capability. We've been pouring our precision strike missiles into Iran under the mistaken belief that if you hit them with a certain amount of high explosives, you'll get, a certain percentage of destruction. We're destroying nothing except buildings, as the Iranians proved today. We're not impacting their ballistic missile capabilities. Pete Hex is a liar, straight up lying. He doesn't know what he's doing, and that's the whole point. We don't know what we're doing. We're bombing for the sake of bombing. We're bombing for statistics just to get a certain, tonnage of high explosives dropped so that, the ridiculous people, because they won't allow real battle damage assessment, so other people are just doing calculations. This is a president who's briefed on war porn every morning. That's his war briefing, war porn. People sit there and just take, images of us blowing things up. They show it to him for 20 mins, and he just sits doing mental math.
I think it's actually just a few minutes, really. I think it's a few minutes. I think it's just a few minutes of video. I don't even know if it's 20, Scott. Well,
he won't last long. He has to. I'm being mean to this guy, but I don't care. I despise him. I despise everything about him. He's not a president in any sense of the word. He is the worst kind of dictator, the kind of dictator who is so far removed from reality. And he surrounded himself with yes men and yes women who just won't tell him the truth. I mean, they just give him the war porn. He sits there and jerks off to it every day and says, we're winning. And then he, whatever else he does, who knows? But we're not winning. We're losing. We are getting defeated strategically. It's not about the amount of American military equipment that's been destroyed. Hopefully we won't lose much and we don't put any boots on the ground and all our boys and girls come home. But we're being defeated strategically. Iran owns the global economy right now. They're destroying the global economy, and Iran has the ability to make it worse. There's nothing we can do to stop the Iranians. That's the point. There's nothing we can do to stop the Iranians. Conventionally, I guess we could, bring in nuclear weapons, but what then? What would 27 underground missile facilities do? Do we even know where they are? Tulsi Gabbard? We think we know Tulsi. You know nothing, because if you knew, this war would be over. We think we know where it is. Well, you don't know. I hope it's all there, because then we can have a negotiated settlement. But who could blame the Iranians if they wanted to convert, to enrich the uranium to the 94 to 98% level and produce 3 to 5, 12 to 20 kiloton warheads? A uranium gun design doesn't need to be tested. Very simple. The missiles they're firing right now are all nuclear capable, the warheads they're using. The beauty of it is the Iranians are doing all the nuclear delivery testing. That needs to be done right now, because the warheads they're sending in right now, they have different payloads. They're doing vibration and heat shielding tests for the operational launch. If they test it and hit the target, they go. It seems our vibration and heat shielding tests work now. They can put the uranium device in there and deliver it with precision. We can't shoot it down. So this is where Israel has to be careful, and the United States has to be careful, because Iran has the ability to physically remove Israel from the face of the earth. Now, Iran will pay a horrible price and may not even survive as a nation state. But if you're an Israeli, that doesn't matter. What matters is your temple is gone. Your biblical homeland is gone, and this isn't Armageddon. The second, it's just that they're going to kill everybody. All the Israelis will die. Again, Iran controls this war. Iran is the driver, and it frustrates Donald Trump more than you can possibly imagine because he wants to be the guy in charge. So he makes stuff up. Enter the Russians. And I still come back to believing that the Russians will save the day because the Russians have the ability to talk to the United States. They have the ability to talk to Israel, and they have the ability to talk to Iran. And Russia has a vested interest in bringing stability to this region. And they can also do things on their own terms, such as getting the energy sanctions lifted against them, getting all sanctions lifted against them, and also getting sanctions lifted against Iran. And also, you know, with the United States pulling out of NATO, that would be a big Russian victory, and that would be the end of Ukraine. And so Russia will get what it wants in Ukraine. You know, the stage is being set for a grand bargain. You know, I had a little back and forth with Nima. He believes that Iran should have a nuclear weapon. I'm just telling you, right? It's not going to happen. All of you who said Iran should have a nuclear weapon before, do you know what's winning the war for Iran right now? Not having a nuclear weapon. If you guys would just think for a second, Iran is winning because they have ballistic missiles pounding targets, including Israel. If Iran had a nuclear weapon right now, we'd be greenlit to use them against Iran. Because Iran can't strike the U.S. with a nuclear weapon, we can strike Iran with our full nuclear arsenal. A nuclear weapon will only guarantee that Iran is destroyed. We must realize there is no deterrence with a nuclear weapon. It only invites destruction. People might say, why can't Iran have one if Israel does? Because Israel has one. Guys, again, I'm just trying to be as clear as possible. Dan proven right on this. Every time you doubted me, and people doubted me before when I said there won't be a nuclear weapon, there won't be a nuclear weapon, the president told me. There won't be a nuclear weapon, the foreign minister said. There won't be a nuclear weapon. Nothing's changed. A nuclear weapon only means Iran will be destroyed. And religiously, you lose everything. All those thousands of people in the street right now, they are there because they truly believe in the Islamic Republic. If you start reversing these established fatwas, you are going to have serious problems. Iran must definitely put its uranium enrichment levels at 60%.
Oh, Sky, looks like we've lost you. Are you still there? No? Maybe try reloading?
All right, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. Okay.
They must keep up the enrichment. I think that causes this warning. That allows Donald Trump to claim victory. He gained political leverage he can take credit for, and I don't think the Iranians care if he declares victory. Americans won't mind because the real win is that they will continue to control the Strait of Hormuz. This dynamic will never change. They now own it. And they will have their sanctions lifted for the first time since the creation of the Islamic Republic. Look, with free trade, they'll thrive and they'll be part of BRICS. They'll be an integral part of BRICS. It's just a pure win-win-win-win-win across the board. Iran likely won't get nuclear weapons barring an Israeli first strike, which would change everything.
Yeah, well, Iran has made it quite clear that was never in the interest of the current Iranian government. From before this war, I mean, leading into this war, there were talks and talks by the United States, fear-mongering about Iran building a bomb again and again, and Iran said, no, we're actually not going to do this, and we don't need to do this. I think it's also like, we don't need to do it. This is a key point because, it seemed like Iran was definitely going to get attacked since both the United States and Israel were planning to attack Iran. And Iran said, stood firm and said, well, we have what we need to defend ourselves. And I think that's really been the position since the beginning, Scott. And here's what Donald Trump is currently saying about the Strait of Hormuz, which I also wanted to ask you about, given that what you just outlined there actually does require the United States to give concessions. And Donald Trump and the Trump administration, we can't really think very highly of them. But nonetheless, many people outside the Trump administration say the only way out, even former defense officials, everyone, is that you have to give Iran something. If you're going to end this war, you must offer concessions. Otherwise, you'll just keep on fighting and, consequences will pile up. But Donald Trump keeps demanding concessions that Iran says it's not going to give. For example, regarding the Strait of Hormuz, they say, oh, it's just us and Oman. That's who really will dictate the Strait of Hormuz. It's our territorial waterways. So what do you make of this fact? A lot of people believe Donald Trump is going to get up there at 9 p.m. tonight and announce something major on the war. I'm not so sure about that. But nonetheless, it seems like what your outline has got requires the United States to give something. Do you honestly believe the United States will eventually concede to Iran's demands? And if not,
It's not for the United States to give. Iran owns it.
oh yeah, the trade-off media.